I'm calling to order the General City Council of Gladstone, regular agenda, September 8, 2015. It is now 6:40 p.m. Jolene, will you do the roll call, please?
Councilor Schickman?
Here.
Councilor Mercero?
Here.
Councilor Johnson? Councilor Turner? Here. Councilor McMahon?
Here.
Councilor Reisner?
Here.
Mayor Jacob Ellis?
Here. You all join me, please, to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a reminder, folks, the 5x7 cards, if you want to speak, just fill it out. It's right there at that podium on your way in the door. That's the way you can address us. We have two sessions, one in the beginning, one in the end, where you can speak to us. Just make sure you fill the card out and hand it up to the city recorder, Assistant City Administrator Jolene. Any agenda additions or corrections?
I got a handful of them tonight for you, Your Honor. First off, we'd like to swear in our newest police officer, and I'd like that to come immediately after agenda corrections and additions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Item 2, I'd like to take the Clackamas River Water Providers letter that is listed as correspondence and move that to discussion. Item 3, I'm going to pull the public hearing, ordinance 1459. Part of the problem there is David Doofman is the guy that's got the information there, and he wasn't able to join us tonight due to a couple of council meetings on the same evening. He had to choose. So that would be under the regular agenda. Item 11 will be scratched. I would like to move city manager's work schedule up to regular agenda, so that would be item 12. Confused yet? Item 13 is going to be as a result of our executive session, and there will be a motion there for you. And with that, I think that's the only changes I've got.
The only. Any councilors have any amendments and suggestions, changes, or corrections? Okay. That being said, any discussion on it? We're good? Good with the changes? Good with the changes? Everybody? Okay. Moving right along, we might as well go to the police officer swearing then.
Okay, I'd like to bring up Lieutenant Jeff Jolly.
Hi, my name is Jeff Jolly with the Gladstone Police Department. We're proud and happy to be able to swear in our newest officer of the Gladstone Police Department, Carl Bell. Carl comes to us via Kansas, via 12 years, 13 years, and 14 years in Pullman, Washington. So he brings a great deal of experience and knowledge to this area as he and his wife are starting a new chapter in their life. His spouse, Reagan, is here with him tonight, and if the judge will come up, and Carl, Reagan, wherever you
oh, we usually do it with the podium.
Yeah.
We'll let her get the camera before we get started.
Building it up.
Yeah.
Faithfully support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the State of Oregon and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Gladstone, that I will support the law enforcement code of ethics, and that I will bravely, conscientiously, and impartially discharge my duties as a police officer for the City of Gladstone, to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Now we go for his first on-duty injury.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey, welcome.
Very much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very much.
Okay. With that, we are now, are we going to do the Metro presentation right now and then business from the audience? Well, our esteemed Metro Representative Carlotta Colette is with us today. Thank you for coming.
Does this move forward? It does. Oh, good. I can't believe this is the first update I'm giving you this year, and so many of you are new to the council, and Mayor, this is my first time before you, so I sort of feel like saying congratulations, but you've all been here for a while. I look forward to getting to know you all and getting to work more closely with you. Before I start my regular update, I did want to tell you, the Metro Council met today to go over the community planning and development grants, and the recommendation from the advisory committee is to not only award you the grant that you've applied for, but to offer you a little bit of extra money as well. They loved your application. And we still have to get the Metro Council's vote, but it was thumbs up around the room, and I think it's really exciting. They really, you guys did a great job with that proposal, so I'm not sure how many of you were actually on the council when you submitted it, but you should all be very, very proud. This is a really cool grant. It's one of the bigger ones. It's, I think, 176. Something like that, and then I think that we're going to add on another $12,000 of technical assistance, because we weren't sure, or the committee wasn't sure that you had the depth of staff, maybe, to deliver on all the ideas, and so but they loved it. In fact, some of the comments were, I love this proposal. So I'm excited for you.
Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then to the tougher stuff. As you all know, I think Metro's primary job is managing the urban growth boundary around our 25 cities and the majority of 3 counties, Metro's urban area. We start this process years in advance. We came out with an urban growth report in 2014, which basically tells us where we are as a region, how many people we know are here now, how many people we think will come over the next 20 years, how many jobs we think we were going to need, and how much land all of that is going to take. So the urban growth report essentially said, unless we have an incredible growth spurt, we won't need more land. So and this is actually the first time since like the 1980s that we will be probably recommending that we don't expand the urban growth boundary. I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but I did want to break down some of the whys behind that, and a big one is just that we had some questions about Portland and how much it's doing, and Damascus and how much it's doing. We think we've resolved those to the degree that we can, and even with all those questions, we still have enough land inside the current urban growth boundary, inside our current cities, to not need to expand. And one of the reasons that we want to really focus on not expanding is that whenever we expand the urban growth boundary, it's like spreading the peanut butter thinner and thinner, and the money that you need for your infrastructure goes outside the region to these new communities. So it's really important to Metro, and I think to our cities, that we try to make the most of the money we have, the infrastructure we have, and build our communities up inside before we start expanding the UGB again. But the actual recommendations are from our Chief Operating Officer. The Council has not voted on this yet. There will be a discussion tomorrow night with the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, our county, city, and other advisors that we work with. The first of those is, as I said, don't expand the urban growth boundary. But we're only required by state to do this every 6 years, and our recommendation from the COO is to actually start this process sooner, for a lot of reasons. One is that we're coming out of the Great Recession, and things are starting to pick up, and the data we did our urban growth report on is actually getting a little old, so we want to make sure that we've got current data. The other is that we currently, even if we said let's expand the urban growth boundary, Clackamas County and Multnomah County don't have any place that we could expand into, because we only expand into what are called urban reserves, and the urban reserves are held up in litigation right now. So if we were to expand, the only place we could expand would be Washington County. And no city in Washington County has asked for an expansion in this round. So really, it's sort of a no-brainer. Why expand when you don't have anywhere to expand into? And so one of our third recommendation is that we resolve this litigation, and we believe we can do that pretty quickly. The problem we're having right now is that Clackamas County wants to make a much bigger process out of this than we do, so whether or not we can resolve this urban reserves question more quickly really depends a lot on Clackamas County. That's a lot of information to try to get you through in a couple of minutes, but I'm happy to take questions and to come in and meet with you in smaller sessions if you really want to go deeper into this. But the fourth recommendation, and I think this is the one that's in some ways most critical, well, the rest of them are pretty critical too, but the fourth is really doing the urban growth processes the way we've been doing them does not allow us to reward communities like Wilsonville, which is ready to expand and does do very well at expanding its urban growth boundary and building up its community. So we want to maybe talk with people around the region, yourselves in particular, local city councils and mayors, about is there a better process for how we go about this so that we can reward performance and not just say we've got X number of acres in Damascus and Hillsborough, so we don't need any more anywhere. Maybe we do need more in Wilsonville or some other cities. So we want to look at that. The fifth is we really want to not be doing this just every 6 years. We want to look at job growth and transportation and housing on a more ongoing basis and give you regular reports, regular updates on how the region is doing. The sixth is really, one of the things that we discovered in our urban growth report is that average incomes nationwide, this is something, if I'm sure you follow a lot of the news, average incomes are actually going down, and we want to take a strong look at what that means in this region. We want to try to raise the middle income and focus a lot on jobs in our region. And then finally, we want to continue to be investing in plans like yours, your new downtown plan that you got the grant for, and other cities around the region, and look at ways to fund infrastructure, because that really is the challenge. There's not much point in expanding outside the existing UGB when we can't reinstall the water and maintain the systems that we have in place. So that's kind of the short version, and this is not advancing me. Let's see if it goes back. It went,
Double click.
Okay. So that's the next steps, which is the slide I wanted. And essentially tomorrow we get a recommendation from MPAC, the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. We'll be having a couple of public hearings coming up, and I can leave you a hard copy of this if you're straining to try to read that. The final urban growth report will be available for review in October, and we anticipate making our final decision in November. There's two huge corridor projects that are also ongoing in the region, and we usually have one or two big projects, and the most recent one that I was most active on actually was the South Corridor McLaughlin, which was many, many years ago. The Southwest Corridor runs from downtown Portland out roughly 99 W out to Tigard, Sheridan. That's ongoing right now. It involves 5 cities. They've been working on it for a couple of years now, and they're still in the process. They recently dropped the idea of putting a tunnel under Pill Hill, under OHSU. That was part of the project. We were considering maybe a tunnel similar to the zoo so that there would be a light rail station, but that's been dropped. We're still trying to decide how to get to Portland Community College, Sylvania campus, so that's still coming up. And we're still involved and will be involved in more public engagement. The decisions are coming up in the next several months. Powell Division is the other one. The Powell Division corridor is probably one of the most dangerous corridors. Well, I know it's the most dangerous corridor in the region. The people are killed every year trying to get across Powell. It's also one of the ones where we have a lot of transit riders. So we want to really look at, is there a more efficient form of transit that could help bring people out the Powell Division corridor. They're looking at what's called bus rapid transit, or in some communities it's called better rapid transit. And it's really using buses. In some places it would have a dedicated lane which would allow it to speed up and go faster than ongoing traffic. A lot of the ways it would probably be right in traffic. A big process underway, and we're just in the beginning stages of this, is I think it's changed to 3 years now. We have what are called regional flexible funds. These are the dollars we get from the federal government to help control pollution and congestion. So they're really usually focused on things like sidewalks, bike paths, transit, things that help people get out of their car to reduce congestion, reduce air pollutions. Air quality is the term. So those dollars are fairly small. It's around 30 million or so that we'll be able to play with. It might be next year, it might be more or less. It depends a lot on Congress because these are federal dollars. Right now we're looking at how do we distribute those around the region? What are regional priorities that we would be nominating to get this funding? Each county, through the coordinating committees, through what the Clackamas counties is C4, helps to queue up what are the primary projects. So you will be, if you have a project, you'll be putting that into the queue. It will go to C4. Folks at Clackamas County Coordinating Committee will help prioritize those and bring them back to Metro and to the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. As I said, we're in the early stages of this, and I'll keep you up to speed on it. Another big project we're undertaking is that Metro controls all of the solid waste system in the entire region, and you probably don't think about it in these terms, but each of us generates around a ton of garbage a year, and that garbage, anything we don't recycle, gets put into a truck and hauled out to eastern Oregon, 140 miles to a landfill in Gillum County. And over the past several years, we've been talking to people about, is that the best we can do? We already recycle better than anybody in the United States. We recycle about 64% of our garbage, which is pretty cool. There's places in Europe that do better, but we're really right up there at the top. But that's still bringing 1 million tons of garbage to eastern Oregon, and could we be generating energy from it? Could we be recycling it better? Are there things that we could be doing? Are there things that we should be diverting from that food, that stream altogether, and food is one of those food wastes? Can we be using those better? So we've engaged people all around the region. We've actually had some pretty fun interesting exchanges with people. We had a film competition on short films on garbage, and the film presentation was the most attended film series at the Film Study Center. So it's surprising to me that people care this much about garbage, but this is a region that cares about what happens to its garbage. So we're looking at, is there a better way to treat our garbage? Our contract with Gillum County in eastern Oregon is up in 2019, and that's why we're trying to make as many of these decisions before that date as possible. One of my pet projects is right down the road from here at Willamette Falls. We have hired the architect team of Snøhetta, Meyer Reed, and Dialogue. Snøhetta is a Norwegian-based firm we're dealing with their New York office, most famous for the Oslo Opera House. Meyer Reed has done a lot of projects locally. They are a local firm. And Dialogue, we're not sure exactly what role they played, but they were part of the design team that did Granville Island up in Vancouver, Washington, Vancouver, BC, sorry. and that's one of the models for what we've been looking at with Willamette Falls. I'm hoping most of you know what the project is, but for those of you who don't, this is the 23-acre former Blue Heron Paper Mill Company in Oregon City. If you have not had a tour of the project yet, I'd be happy to get you on a tour. It's really exciting. The mayor was on one with the governor this summer. We also secured $7.5 million from the state from lottery bond money, and that brings us now to around, I think we have 17 million total towards a budget of about 30 million to provide public access across the site with a river walk and some public amenities to bring people to the foot of these falls for the first time in over 150 years. This is the second largest waterfall by volume in all of North America, second only to Niagara Falls. And unless you're in a boat or worked at the paper mill, you really didn't even know they were there. So we're very excited. We think this is a game changer for Oregon City, for West Lynn, probably for Gladstone, and really for the whole region, and I think for the state, and that's why the state's been so supportive. Tomorrow night we're having a big kickoff with the architects at the Portland Art Museum. If you're available, it's called Bright Lights. It's where we're going to have kind of a Q&A with the architect team, so it'll be a lot of fun. 5:30 to 8 tomorrow night at the Portland Art Museum. A lot going on at the Oregon Zoo. You might remember in 2008, just in the beginnings of the recession, we passed a bond measure with the voters of the region to upgrade the Oregon Zoo. The number one project has been and continues to be expanding the elephant habitat from about 1.5 acres to more than 6 acres. And it's huge and wonderful, and we'll be opening it this fall, and I would love it. If any of you want to come to the opening, please let me know. We'll get invitations out to you. It's really a lot of fun. Also, since a lot of you are new, I want to extend the invitation that I always extend to my cities, and that is if you ever want a behind-the-scenes tour at the zoo, let me know. I can get you back. We can feed polar bears. We can't quite visit the elephants yet because they're just moving into their habitat, but we have wonderful access behind the scenes and show you kind of how the Oregon Zoo operates, because we're not a typical zoo by any means. Last week we also had groundbreaking for the Education Center at the zoo, which is going to be huge. It's really a wonderful thing. We'll be bringing together conservation education from all around the region, and Audubon, some of the schools will be having classes up there at the zoo. I also wanted to let you know that the grant applications are now open for Nature and Neighborhood Trails grants. That's $500,000 will be available, and I know that there are lots of trails around and in Gladstone that you might need funding for, so keep this one in mind. This is all part of the Regional Trails Plan, and I know that there are places here that could probably qualify for a grant. We're also in the midst right now of another big investment opportunity, and that is we have about 17,000 acres of parks and natural areas in the region that Metro owns and operates on behalf of the region. And until now, we've never really had an integrated system plan for how do we want all of them to operate. We've been busy acquiring land because the market was good and we could acquire land, all from willing buyers, important habitats, riverfront, things like that. But when we went out and talked to people about what were the important values, why do you care about having parks and natural areas, these are some of the words that came up. People, love it for nature. They love it because they love to take their family out into the parks. They love wildlife. There's you can imagine your own reasons for wanting to go to parks or natural areas. And out of that, over the past year, we've held a lot of public forums. We've been at farmers markets and community events and identified 6 things that really were the values that people have when they talk about parks. And obviously nature, just being close to nature, is one of them, but also recreating, being able to play out in nature. Having parks near them, the equity, making sure that there's parks distributed fairly around the region. Connecting up with nature, and then for some people that's a real spiritual connection. Vibrant communities, the sense of this region is if you're not near a park, you're not vibrant. And if you've got a park that you can walk to, that is an important amenity for your community. And then there's a strong sense of the need to steward and be caring of our resources, particularly clean air and water. So a lot of the habitat that we buy is upland habitat that is part of our water supply. So it all fits together into making our community more livable. And one of the projects that we're doing a lot right now is making sure that all kids feel safe in parks and in the woods. And this one I particularly love because this kid, when we were talking to him, he lives in North Portland. He's a pretty tough little kid. He was scared of the woods. He'd never been in the woods. He said, I've never been in a forest. and he knows his turf, but this turf was new. And we want all kids in our region to feel safe, to feel understanding, and to know how to handle themselves in the woods and in our parks and natural areas. And we have them all over the place. You can't read this map, but if you go on our website, you can see them. We have parks, trails, natural areas all over. As I said, there's more than 17,000 acres, and there's just quite a lot of them right around here. And when we're not doing our own parks, we're contributing to parks like here, like Meldrum and Rynearson and other areas that are part of the city park system. We don't own it, but we're happy to help support the work that you're all doing there. And I was going to have this one removed, but because it's very hard to read. But if you want to participate, and we'd love to hear from you, Brian Kennedy is our staff person who's handling it, but please feel free to just call me if you want more information about any of these subjects. I'm available. As the mayor knows, I respond to phone calls, I respond to emails. I consider myself one of your advocates to help you accomplish your aspirations. So with that, any other questions? And that's the end of my presentation.
I have a question about garbage.
See, garbage gets them every time.
Portland has an unusual system where they don't have traditional garbage pickup anymore, right?
Right.
I don't fully understand it, but it has evidently created some other problems where things end up in the sewers that don't belong there, especially wet strength paper products, cleaning products, and they've had some problems clogging that up. Well, what are your thoughts on that, and how are you going to prevent that going forward?
Well, and each city, as you probably have your, I'm assuming that all cities, but Portland certainly, when I was on the Milwaukee City Council, we had our own contracts with the people who pick it up, the haulers. So Portland created its own rule around both food garbage and every other week pickup. And so and they did it pretty abruptly, so there was a lot of freaking out, to put it in layman terms. We have very little control over what goes into the sewer. Unfortunately, we control what goes into the garbage can to some degree. Mostly we control what comes out of the garbage can and where it heads from there. So what we are trying to do is just let people know that's a tremendous burden, and most of our sewer systems are old. So I mean, if you've ever visited a water treatment plant, a sewage treatment plant, if you haven't, I would encourage it. The infrastructure is really a nightmare, but it's what makes flushing the toilet work. So to the extent that we can, we are trying to help educate along with the other local governments, but it's not really our job to tell people what they can flush down the toilet.
So Portland made its own garbage decisions. Metro did not mandate that.
No. In fact, it was a real challenge for us because a lot of the composting facilities won't take any food waste.
Right.
And so we were actually having to find places where new places to bring food waste mixed with yard debris, because all of a sudden we had this huge amount, because they're allowing people to mix food waste and yard debris.
North Plains.
North Plains.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anybody?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you. And as I said, call if you want to go behind the scenes at the zoo, or we're trying to set up a behind the scenes at the Portland 5 Performing Arts Centers. Metro doesn't own them, but we do manage them, so all the Broadway shows, anything at the Schnitz, anything at Keller, the Performing Arts Centers. Metro operates all of that, and if you ever want to get a behind the scenes tour, let me know. I can get you behind the scenes on some things, and couldn't get people behind the scenes of Phantom of the Opera. That was what everybody wanted. They said no. But I'll work on it if you're interested. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again, Carlotta. Appreciate everything you've been doing for us. All right. We're going down to business from the audience. We have anything? Nobody. All right. Down to the consent agenda, we have 6 items on the consent agenda. Approval of minutes of June 15th, 2015, and August 11th, the regular council meeting. Approval of the 2015 system development charges, project list, September 1st, 2015, budget committee appointment, monthly report for July 2015, and payment of August claims.
I'd like to pull number 2 if I could, the SDCs. I have a question or two regarding those.
Okay, so we're...
I'd like to pull number 3.
Number 3 is getting pulled. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 1, 4, 5, and 6. Or do we want to discuss and then put them back? We're moving them to the regular agenda to discuss them, right? So we can approve those consent agenda items, correct? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve items 1, 4, 5, and 6 on the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, the motion was made by Councilor McMahon, was seconded by Councilor Johnson. Discussion on those consent agenda items being approved? No discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, items 1, 4, 5, and 6 consent agenda are approved. Do we want to move that down then? Will they become the first discussion item?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so item number 2 of the consent agenda, let's talk about it.
Okay.
Neil, you raised it.
I did. So, well, the recommendation from staff is not to, increase any of the amounts except for the amount that apparently passes through for Tri-City Service District. And my question is, because of our failing infrastructure that we've been discussing for the last couple of years, wouldn't it behoove us to increase them, if not at least a modest amount, to, try to stay ahead or, be building up some of those funds so that when we have to start making decisions to, replace sewer lines, water lines, and I know it's for when things are new, but still, is there some reason why, legally we can't?
Well, I'm not certain. I haven't read the ORSs lately, but legally I don't think it's a good idea. We've got the water system master plan and the sewer master plan in various stages of getting approved, and we're working on the sanitary master plan. I think a better time to make those increases would be at the time those master plans are adopted. Just putting, at this point we don't have any capability in our SDC ordinances to just increase SDCs. You need some support for that. So I probably wouldn't feel comfortable as a city administrator increasing them without some sort of support.
I don't support as in
other words,
please explain.
Councilor, what you have to understand, system development charges, you can only expend them for their impact fees, okay, and it's impact from new development. So you haven't adjusted, and I haven't seen your methodology, but you would only be able to increase those if you were able to show that that was as a result not of existing usage, but of impact from new development, okay? So until that's done, you don't have, the statute doesn't allow you, and if you try to create a system development charge by increasing it, for what I'll look to say is actually just an impact from existing users, it would be an unlawful expenditure. You couldn't expend the money, and the statute provides that you would then have to put that back in from other funds. So you can't look at it as essentially a separate bank account for your infrastructure. It's only a bank account to basically address needs resulting from new development, okay? And by new development, I don't mean you have to have a new house, which you can say is if someone's making an improvement to their house and they're adding a new washroom. I mean, you can charge, you can get down to that, what I will say, down in the weeds, and you can charge for those sorts of things.
Mhm.
But you then also have to have the methodology that shows how you got to that analysis. And that this is not the time to be able to do that. You're going to have to redo your methodology. So, does that make sense?
It does, but like I say, we're talking about maybe selling off over some property, which maybe would go to a developer, and so these fees would be what they would
Bingo. Yes.
would be
That's
charged.
what they would have. That's what they would be charged.
Right.
To
that's what I'm saying. So if
But you have to have an understanding of why those charges are there. You have to come up with a methodology, and by a methodology I mean essentially a formula on how you got to where you are for a particular charge. So, for example, with a sanitary system, you would say, okay, what they call an EDU, which is an equivalent dwelling unit.
Right.
You would say, okay, this would be the cost. This is how much land this is going to be developed. This is the zoning for this. This is how much each of those units would be charged, because you would only be able to put in 15 or 20 or 25 new units, and that's what they would be charged. In order to come up with that number, you've already basically, and you've come and said, well, in order to do that, we're going to add new capacity to our existing infrastructure. The cost of that increased capacity to address the impacts from that new development is X. Will then divide that new capacity need by that, and that's what.
Right.
That's
so with inflation, at least.
No. Not necessarily.
No,
You're raising it. You are in fact raising it by a standard that is. I think it's what's a Seattle. I think it's a Seattle construction standard.
Right. Right. Which is zero. Yeah.
That's essentially like an inflation number for the construction industry, and so that's basically a standardized number. You could adjust your.
So I'm sorry.
You could adjust it such that you could say it'll be based on CPI or something else. You could use some other standard if you wanted to, but you would then have to adjust your methodology in order to adopt that as your new standard.
So, and I had another follow-up question in regards. So there's not a Portland construction cost index?
I haven't.
At this point, you'd have to adjust your methodology. You can't just by stroke of the gavel tonight increase these fees by some amount. If you want to give staff the task to go back and adjust the methodology, we can do that, but I would really rather wait until these master plans are done. I guess what I'm trying to say, this isn't the time to just increase the fees by some amount.
I mean,
okay, I understand that, but I'm trying to do a little education here at the same time. So there isn't a Portland construction?
I don't know if the ENR does adopt if there is a Portland one. My assumption would be is the Seattle construction standard cost is as high, if not higher, than the Portland construction.
Okay.
So you're always going to pick one that's relatively high to make yourself, to give yourself a certain amount of flexibility in terms of if those costs were to increase. I mean, if you've driven through Seattle recently, there's a lot of construction going on in Seattle. I'm pretty sure that their construction costs are equal to or higher than ours.
Okay.
The other thing that you should look at, and this is a thing that whenever you consider infrastructure like this, is the other avenue for you to get if you say, well, we should be adjusting potentially banking some money to do infrastructure replacement. You're going to have to look at your rates, because that's where the rate structure is where you're going to be able to get what I'll say the lawful revenue to replace lines that may be old, because those lines have been here and been used by existing users.
Right.
And existing users are the ones that are going to ultimately have to pay for that, unless you get a grant or something else. But that is going to be the source of the funding for that. So,
any idea how long this methodology has been used?
A long time.
Probably. I mean, you can go out and hire someone to come and do an analysis for you, and they would look at a number of variables, and SDC methodologies for all sorts of for the allowed infrastructures that are allowed to charge for system development charges, including parks, sanitary sewer, stormwater, roads. They developed those over the time, and they would look at each of those systems. Either they would look at them separately and collectively if you want. That'll obviously be a study that's going to cost some money in order to do, but they'll basically come up with the methodology, with the what I'll call the approach that you use to analyze what is the impact of growth on our infrastructure that we have, regardless of the nature of the infrastructure.
Did you want a separate motion on each one of these?
Why don't we just take Tom's, and then we could do
Thank you so much for your
I have a quick comment for something you said, Neil.
Sure.
The sewer connection, the EDA, the SDC for that is set by Tri-City Sewer District. I mean, that's not something we have any control over.
Right, well, that's why I mentioned the pass-through.
Yeah, we do we go through the advisory committee, and then right now the Board of County Commissioners, sitting as the Tri-City governance body, sets that. We don't have any control.
I was trying to hopefully slide past that issue. At this time.
Item number 3.
Okay, positive comment. Our interim CM has done some things to our project list. He has added some projects that he believes, and I support, that they be added to help develop the things we're trying to accomplish. And he's also, dates are always a concern to me, and he's reformatted the dates a bit, basically to when they were talked about to start, what the goal was, and now basically another date to say this is when we're going to get here, I think. So anyway, it's a positive thing, and in looking at those from week to week, I support it immensely, and I make a motion to approve the project list as it stands.
Well, I have one question on it before we go on, unless you want to go to discussion.
Point of order, he's made a motion, you gotta
I'll second that so we can move on.
Okay, so now you can discuss. There you go.
So,
thank you.
The motion is made by Councilman Mercer to approve the consent agenda item number 3, the project list. It was seconded by Councilor Johnson. Discussion.
On the library IGA, the 2011 IGA, about maybe a third of the way down the first page, may wait. The last sentence says, "May wait for results for civic building projects to finalize."
Yes.
These are 2 separate projects, but we're waiting. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. The IGA has been drafted. There are things in there that are dependent on cost of building, which will in turn generate the cost of money to support it or to operate it. So we really kind of need to know where we're going to build the library, how much it's going to cost, and then we can finalize that IGA with the county. I have been in discussions with Gary Barth, I think is his name, and the county administrator about this, and so they know of our deliberations right now and are confident that we're going to go forward. So,
the other thing, the first column on this sheet has got PB, PB, PB. I think maybe those need to be changed.
I wasn't certain what that stood for. I'm sorry, it never occurred to me what it actually did. I'll fix
I believe that's the person in charge of those projects.
And he's still in charge. I'm sorry.
That's all I had.
And I agree with Tom. I appreciate the clarity that you've given these. I think it gives it a lot more meaning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'm good.
Okay, so we had the motion made, it was seconded, we had our discussion. All in favor of approving consent agenda item number 3, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, item number 3 approves, but we got to go back to Neil.
I move that we accept staff's recommendation on agenda item number 2.
Second it.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilor Reisner, seconded by Councilor McMahon. Discussion, item number 2. Okay, no discussion, so, all in favor of approving item number 2, consent agenda, the improvement of the 2015 system development charges, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, item number 2 for the consent agenda has been approved. All right, moving down to, regular agenda at this time.
Yes.
Item number 8, resolution 1062.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think the staff report is fairly explanatory. This is an issue that was pointed to in the last couple of audits in terms of the fact that we have no delegated authority from council to staff, and this is an opportunity for council to do that. If you have comments that can't be corrected tonight in the current agenda item, I don't mind bringing it back at another council meeting. So with that, I'll entertain your questions.
I just had 2 English things.
Oh.
So on page 8.3, for everybody except for the police chief, you have the, so I think it might make more sense to have the police chief. And then on the next page, on examples 1, you have that first sentence, you have be signed and then be signed. So I assume you probably want to take one of those out.
What page is that? I'm sorry.
Just second, page 2.
Oh, yep, got it.
A4.
Yes, sir.
That was just my English things. Other than that, I loved it. It looked great.
Thank you.
My only comment on that is the wording regarding it says city administrator, I believe. We've discussed the wording possibly changing, and I was wondering if there's a way that we could include CM and/or city administrator, so if we come with that conclusion to make the city administrator a CM, we wouldn't have to go back and fix it.
I think it's in the charter. Until you change your charter in terms of making someone a city, making the position a city manager, you should probably keep it at this. And if you do that, assuming you do that in the charter, you can then make that adjustment later on, and either in the charter itself or in some subsequent resolution. You don't, in other words, the office of city manager does not exist and cannot exist in the city of Gladstone until such time as the charter provides for that particular position.
Okay. For information, can you, in fact, make a resolution to, in fact, change everything then that's been before and after and whatever?
As long as, yes, I mean, as long as the document has what I'll say equal status. In other words, if the other things were done by resolution, you can change them by resolution. If they were done by an ordinance, they could be changed by an ordinance.
So you may have to do a couple.
You may have to do a couple.
Okay.
But that's in terms of, but that's not an issue that you have to deal with tonight. I would suggest that you can just don't have to make that change.
Do we have a standard purchase order system across all departments?
Jolene, can I ask you that question?
We have a standard purchase order that's used by all departments, but there is not necessarily a standard whether it is used by all departments.
It's an issue, not the standard.
Not the form.
So, what was that again? I didn't...
Enforcement is the issue, not the standard. We have a standard purchase order policy that is supposed to be used across, and by the way, we are working towards that, but hasn't been used over the past.
So how many purchase orders per day, per week does the city issue currently?
I have no idea, Counselor. Sorry, I can
numbers.
give you that number.
Okay. So all purchase orders, we're going to enforce purchase orders so that they get used, and all purchase orders are going to be signed by the Assistant City Administrator.
Yes, sir.
Is that adequate to, stop something like Is somebody spending $1,999 every day of the week? I mean, what would happen in those cases?
I believe I'd get a conversation with the assistant city administrator who would come in and say, Ross, you know this is going on?
Okay.
And I would then call that manager in and say what's going on and resolve it from there.
Okay.
The dollar amounts that are budgeted and unbudgeted, are those typical for a city of our size and budget of our size?
I would say they're more typical for a city slightly larger than ours, and probably numbers are slightly larger than we need here, but I haven't done any empirical look at these. These were copied over from the city of Sherwood. Forgive me.
You believe they're reasonable, though?
They were reasonable when Sherwood was about 15,000 people, which is when this was put together.
The staff and city attorney back year and a half ago started working on a bid purchase policy that has never come forward. So what's the status of that, and how does this play in with that?
Well, I don't think it plays in. This is about expenditure and less about the bid. The bid process would not have been contemplated at this time. So, is that right? Am I?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're talking about spending money.
Yes.
Well, this is spending money.
Yes.
One may be the bid process is, you're talking about a process as opposed to the bid process. I mean, I'll have to talk to David about that, whether, what I'll say public contracting issues associated and the process that you go through to basically either buy services or goods or or other, like public improvement contracts. That's the process that I think was contemplated. This is expenditure authority. This is basically what you're authorizing, either in a budgeted or unbudgeted format, the city administrator, and then lower the assistant city administrator, and then as you go down the chain, the hierarchy, what they can expend, not necessarily in the manner in which it was purchased. If you can, in other words, those two can be separate, and I'll make sure that, if the council wants to see the status of what the bid, where we are relative to the bid process and what that policy will be vis-a-vis that, you can have that discussion. I'll make sure, I'll bring it back to David. I'll say, David, where are we on that? And
actually, he already has an email. He's promised to get back to me. He just hasn't yet. And he's
so I am troubled with the amounts. I think they're too large myself.
Okay.
I'd say that I'm like to see half the amount myself, but I don't know I haven't talked to any of my colleagues here as to what their thoughts are.
Well, I think we kind of put the discussion ahead of the motion, so in order to get back, do we have a motion to do this, and then we can have another discussion, and you can raise that. How's that? Yes? Does that make sense?
Okay. I make a motion that we accept it as it is.
I'll second that.
Okay, so I've received a motion from Councilor Mercereau on Resolution 1062, and seconded by Councilor Turner. Discussion.
Well, I'd like to see the amounts half.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is being recommended by staff.
I also have a concern. I like to see a check and balance on the unbudgeted, whether it's just one other signature within the group or one level up higher in the hierarchy, but just some type of check and balance.
Okay.
I really don't have a problem with the dollars budgeted, or with the dollar amounts. My biggest concern is if there's problems with people following the purchasing policy of filling out a purchase order, and now we're going to give them X amount of dollars depending on the position. I would like to put this in place, but only with the guarantee that the enforcement of the policy for purchasing gets held to.
I agree.
And I think, I have to disagree. I think that we are getting too far into the weeds on what the city manager, city administrators should be doing, and let them take care of it. I think these numbers are perfectly all right, and you start saying, well, they're going to spend too much money, so therefore we're not trusting anybody. I think that we have to trust that the fire chief, the police chief, Public Works, the city administrators are going to do the right thing for us. So I disagree with that. I think the numbers are fine. I think it's a good way to set it up and let them do their job.
Mm-hmm.
If we're unhappy with how it's being done, then we do not renew contracts or do something like that. I think this is getting a little bit too much into what their job should be for us.
I think that enforcing a purchase order policy is just good policy. I mean, regardless of whether you're government or whether you're industry or not, I think there needs to be a record of what you have purchased. I think that helps the entire process. It helps with trust. It helps with flow. And you don't end up with what does this invoice go to?
Well, I agree 100%, but I think that's their responsibility to take care of that.
How soon do we anticipate being able to have the enforcement part going in full swing?
Last week when I found out it wasn't being enforced.
Thank you.
So it's taken care of now?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, we've still got some things to work through, and I'm certain there's going to be other bumps in that road. People are going to go, well, should this be on a purchase order or not? And so, I mean, that's got to be taken care of, but it's a best practice to have a purchase order system and have those matches when it comes time to pay the bill. I'm frankly kind of amazed we don't right now and have been operating some places, but...
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of approval of Resolution 1062, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Resolution 1062 is passed. Okay, item number 9.
Yes, sir. Item number 9 is a get-ready more than anything else. We've got property that we've talked about selling as part of our civic buildings projects with no specifics in that. The Oberson property is the one that we have contemplated selling. Once again, I want to underscore contemplated. Council hasn't given me authorization to move forward with that. However, should we contemplate that further, I would like to make sure that any requirements for public right-of-way would be taken care of. I can't do that without somebody taking a look at the property, and that's going to take some time to get that done. In any case, I don't think it's a waste of money because you end up with the property analyzed and a place for public right-of-way. So with that in mind, I talked to Sissel Engineering just because they have knowledge of our current city and our master plans that are in various stages of completion. And so that is why you have this agenda item in front of you tonight. I'll be glad to entertain your questions.
Make a motion that we approve the staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Councilor Sickman to direct staff to hire Sissel Engineering, and was seconded by Councilor McMahon. Discussion.
In the second paragraph of Pat Sissel's letter, says, you also mentioned the city may be interested in having us explore other possibilities such as mining the site for gravel prior to sale. I kind of think that's what got us into this problem in the first place. There's a lot of mythology around this piece of property, and the record's a little sketchy, but I think that's how the city ended up with this property, was to stop somebody from doing that. So I can't imagine that we're going to do that, and I don't think Pat should be looking into it, but The other comment I have is that this is not parkland. Is that true? This is surplus, open space. I've heard some folks say that it's parkland. It is not.
And it's not open space either.
I'm sorry.
It's commercial.
Commercial. Yeah, it's
C2,
commercial
I
property.
believe.
There is a trail running through it. Somebody put a picnic table there, but that doesn't make it parkland. So anyway, I had those two thoughts.
I believe if I may respond to the counselor, I would probably like to remove that from the scope of work, review of whether there should be gravel or not gravel. This is about public right-of-way that we need to put water lines in, sewer lines, and et cetera.
Okay.
So unless council has other thoughts on that.
Well, my only thought on that is, bottom line would be, for that extra step, how do we know how much value that brings us? I mean, let's say a gravel quarry said, "Oh, you're going to make $3.5 million if you quarry the gravel out of here." Then we're going to just say, "Well, thanks, but we're going to sell the property." I think it affects the value, and I think we ought to have that at our disposal. That's just me.
Couple of things. I want to agree with you. I think it does affect the value, and I'd like to see it looked at. And the other thing is, if the city was going to sell the property, if the city chooses that there is a financial gain to do that, at least we would have control of how that was done versus somebody else that we sell the property to. We're not going to have much control over how that happens. So I'm not saying I'm in favor of mining the site, but I don't think there's probably going to be a whole lot of a cost associated with this just to find out that information. The second thing is this contract appears to be a boilerplate CISL contract. I know our city attorneys usually like to use our own contracts and have them sign, so I would just kind of question what staff, mainly the attorney's office, would like to do with that. The one thing that I don't see in there is any sort of time frame for completion, which I would like to see something in there saying that this is a 1-month project, 1-year project, or something. Those are the only comments I had.
Any other discussion?
So I may have spoken too soon about taking the scope out, I guess. Do we want to see what the gravel's worth, or do we not want to see what the gravel's worth?
Well, unless, there is a few trees on there, unless you want to see us hanging from 7 of them, I would I'd take it out, but that's just my thought.
Okay, but follow this thought. I mean,
No,
if you just ignore the fact that there may be value other than the property itself and what's on that property, it would be a nice bundle to take to the citizens and say, hey, before we do this, we are going to mine it, and here's how much we stand to make. And that means we'll be able to put that towards a police station or a city hall or infrastructure.
Right.
That's we would just have that information, that's all.
I understand that. But I'm also remember, like 20 years ago, it cost the city a small fortune because the property owner wanted to do that, and half the citizens, came out in force against it.
Because we weren't making the money. It would be a different story if we went to the citizens and said, hey, listen, we're going to mine it, and we stand to make X amount of dollars.
I don't know.
And you can say, okay, turn your nose up to it, sell, and have somebody else do it.
Well, that's where conversation is, that we should prevent it from being mined in the future.
All right.
Than what's been suggested.
Well, we've had the motion, we've had the discussion.
Sure.
It was seconded, so we could just vote on it. If you all don't want it, then don't vote for it.
Your logic is good, Mayor, but I don't want to be wearing tar and feathers. You know, I think that's where
Sometimes we're just gonna have to wear that suit.
Yeah,
That's just the bottom line. Goes with the
hanging
territory,
from-
boys, that's the way it is.
hanging from the tree no matter what.
That's just the way it is.
Depending on the person.
Oh, man, that's a
So I'd
dangerous
rather
zone.
hang out there because I'm selling the property for the right amount of money than if it's making gravel or not, so.
All right. So, all in favor of approving, or?
Hold on, we got a
Yes, Mayor.
question from staff.
At this point, I'm going to remove my volunteering to remove the scope, so it's as it stands in the packet that you're voting on. You're not voting on me taking anything out of it.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make that clear
Right.
as we move forward.
Just the way it sits.
Just the way it
And what
sits.
about a time frame?
I motion the staff, we accept the staff report as written.
As written.
And it was seconded by you. Yes.
And,
we're good.
and how about the term of the, do you want us to take a look at how the agreement is written, the consulting services agreement? Because there are provisions in there that I would take out, most specifically the attorney's fees provision. I always take out attorney's fees provisions in personal services agreements because that becomes the driver for continuing litigation. And you do have, we have a form agreement, I'm sure the city has a form PSA that I've generated, I know, for a lot of our clients. And I'd be happy to take that back, and just give the city administrator the authority to enter into an agreement with Sissel Engineering, consistent with the terms of the scope of services, but with an agreement approved by the
Actually,
city attorney's office.
If I may, it says recommended staff action, move to direct staff to sign a contract with Sissel Engineering, so on, in a form approved by city attorney, so.
And that would include the time frame.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. All right?
Okay.
We good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so, that was,
We voted. We never voted.
no, we didn't vote yet, because we had discussion. Okay. So we've had the motion, we had the second, we had the discussion. All in favor of directing staff to hire Sissel Engineering, enter a contract with them for the property on Oakfield. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item number 9 is passed. Item number 10, ordinance 1458, allowing the city administrator to adopt and amend administrative policy and rules.
Basically, what this is it allows the city administrator to set administrative policy, in particular where personnel issues are, and then any other policies that are required to run the day-to-day operations, and allows us to set those down in some sort of writing, so when the questions come up, we can be consistent in our answer. That's what this is about.
You want a motion? Okay. Well, I'd like to move that we set this over till next month so that we could get a staff report that will answer some of my questions as to some history, even though I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of questions.
So I don't know if we can make a motion to pull it.
You can move to table it.
Right.
Oh, okay, and then we need a second, then we have discussion.
Right.
Okay, so we had a motion from Councilor Reisner to table ordinance number 1458,
I will second that.
seconded by Councilor Johnson. Discussion.
Although there's, quite a bit of information, there's some information in the whereases, but the ordinance itself is hard to read for me, where starts out with section 2.36.03, and then with some, crossing out of strike portions, underlining new, and then on the back page adds a section to 12.12.030, and like I say, it's just hard to read, where it's not underlined, there's no real explanation as to how it comes together. because you're adding, what duties, item 8 is being added to 2.12.030. But what are the other 7 duties, or, in the code?
So you want to see the whole code in front of you?
Well, not necessarily. Well, I would say not. I would say that section to see how is it necessary to add that? I mean, I went and looked, and I don't know if it really is needed, but that's where I was hoping to get some information from staff convincing me that it's needed, and it's not there.
I think I'd like to have this tabled if council is of that mind, so I could sit down with Councilor Reisner and understand what it is he's looking for, and perhaps we can go through some of those questions before it comes back next time.
Okay.
On discussion, I believe it makes quite a bit of sense in that we wrestle and make policies every meeting or whatever, and there's some that just need to happen, and I think that this was an attempt to do that. So to me it made really good sense. I have no problem tabling it and answering the questions or whatever, but I think it's a good way to go myself.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think the process is very good. I think it's important for our top administrators to set policy for their employees. I'm prepared to move forward with this, but if there needs to be some dialogue for some unanswered questions, I have no issues with that either.
Okay, so we are now voting on the motion that was made to table this item, and the second that was made, we've had a discussion. Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor of tabling ordinance number 1458, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? No, I'm opposed, but, all right, it passed. We've tabled ordinance number 1458. All right. And down to item number 12, city manager work schedule.
In front of you is a lavender copy of a staff report. Talks about my schedule changing in the contract from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, and me getting compensated at 4/5 of what my contract stated. Basically allows me to not report to work for a 5th day out of the week. My work schedule would then be Monday through Thursday on a regular basis, with Fridays off, unless something comes up and I got to be here for a Friday, and I'll make that happen.
I move that we accept the change of work days for the city manager from current 5 days to 4 days.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Johnson, seconded by, I think, Councilor Reisner. I'm going to give him the nod. Discussion? All right. All in favor of approving the work schedule, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right. You have it.
Thank you. The next one, item 13, if I can jump right into it. This has to do with our executive session that we just sat in on, and I need a motion to authorize the interim city administrator to execute on behalf of the city the settlement agreement discussed in executive session between the city and AG Specialty Foods.
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Councilor Johnson, seconded by Councilor Reisner. Discussion? All in favor of that motion to authorize the interim city manager to execute that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You are so authorized.
Thank you.
Okay, Clackamas River water providers. That's next? We moved that down, okay, we're down now, out of the regular agenda items, down to discussion items.
Right.
And the first discussion item is item number 7, Clackamas River Water Providers, which was moved down here. So it is a discussion item. Please discuss.
Please discuss. The correspondence you got was a request by the Clackamas River Water Providers to start the process of taking over the line that Lake Oswego Tigard are currently abandoning, the water line that Lake Oswego is abandoning. Current plans are to take that abandoned line, fill it with grout, and make it completely unusable. The Water Consortium would like to instead, for us to motion to give them the rights to all of the Lake Oswego infrastructure from that old water line that's in Gladstone, so they can repurpose it and use it for emergency services. I think it's just an opportunity for you to discuss it right now. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have on that. I'm certain you all kind of know what's going on there, so with that, let's discuss.
I have two comments. The first one, I'd like to note the date on the original letter of February 6th and their request for having comment, I believe by March, I don't see it right here, but I think it was March, the end of March, something like that.
March 31.
Okay, so I just want to make note of that. It's good to see that we're moving forward with this now. One of the concerns I have, this letter is asking us to give them one of our assets, which I'm not saying is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But on the second to last paragraph, on 7.2, it talks about basically if we give them one of these assets, at a later date they will come back and tell us about their funding allocations, timeline for project completion, developing a secondary agreement which would determine asset ownership, long-term operation maintenance, and renewal obligations. To me, those are kind of some important things that I'd like to know before we enter into any sort of agreement with them. I just don't think this is a very nice letter, but I think we need to have some more information from them before we really move forward with anything.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Any thoughts?
I think it's probably a good idea for a fallback if we get into a dilemma. You know, we were looking at another item regarding running out of water, and this is a backup to me in case that happens. So I don't think it should be thrown out by any means. I think it's a possible good idea.
I will be attending the Clackamas River Water Providers meeting next 2 weeks from tonight. It's on the same night as our second meeting. It starts at 5:30. I may be a little bit late coming into the council meeting, and I will ask in that meeting, shouldn't we get these agreements and shouldn't we see these before moving forward? Is there any other questions you'd like me to ask while I'm there?
Well, I'm curious, the water that was going through the pipe was raw, untreated, and they're wanting to use it for treated water, is that correct? I mean, that's the premise that I have, or from reading this. But wouldn't that be a little difficult?
If I may, Mr. Mayor? Okay. Yeah, I talked to them about this. Frankly, when I first heard of it, I said, gee, so where are they going to get their water to send back to us if they do this? And their thought is that it would come out of the Bull Run system, so because they have connections to Bull Run, so it would turn the pipe around and come this direction. I said, well, what about Usually on water pipes like this, you got to keep 100,000 gallons worth of water going through them every day just to keep them chlorinated. But evidently they've looked into that, and the powers to be say if you send a big burst of chlorinated water through the pipe and then dispose of that water, then it's sufficient to handle treated water. So those are their answers to the same question you've got. I agree with you guys. You don't probably have enough information to decide yes or no. That's why it's here to get those questions on the table. So,
and I think one of the things we don't want them to do is fill it with grout and then have it become useless, period. And so then it's not an asset at all to anybody. So I think that's where we definitely need to keep having this conversation. And as far as the chlorinated, if something like that happens, then it's just going to be you should be boiling your water anyway, no matter what.
Yeah.
So.
Anything else?
Bring us back some info.
I will try.
Thank you.
All right, down to the draft water curtailment ordinance.
There's two parts to this. One is the information that's in your council packet. The other one is for the additional information discussion item, water curtailment ordinance, which is what we have here and what we can indeed implement. And there's also a letter there from Oregon Water Resources Department, State Drought Declaration Process and Emergency Tools. I really don't want to go through too much of this tonight. Suffice it to say that I spoke with the emergency manager for Clackamas County in a meeting. By the way, she had all the water providers for Clackamas County there, and everybody's sense is drought is not going to be an issue within the next couple of months. There's nobody setting on let's call a drought or any of that stuff. But everybody is very concerned about the winter time and getting your ducks in a row about what you will do next year should we not get a sufficient snowpack this year. So I guess this is just the first bits of information that I'm getting to you so you guys can have a real discussion about this at some later date about what we're going to do next year as the year progresses and the snow either falls or doesn't fall. You guys need to be prepared for next springtime. So this is the best information I've got right now. Part of it's from the state of Oregon, and I don't think we have to pass anything tonight, do we, Jolene?
No, we do not.
Okay. So in case more comes, you got great background data. If you want to stop by my office and talk about any of this, I got some understanding, limited as it may be. With that, I'll answer any questions you might have this evening. But
Basically, this is pretty much a standard that other cities or other jurisdictions are putting in place to kind of think about the eventuality that we're going to have to do something.
Two points about the drought. One is it's all in. So if the agricultural community, in the politest way, complains enough about the fact they don't have any water, and they complain enough to the right people, the county could enact a drought even though we have enough water. So it's kind of all in. And the second point is there's not really much there anyway if there's a drought. Not like there's a lot of money. There's some low interest loans available through the feds, that sort of stuff, but probably wouldn't have a lot of impact on us unless we too were out of water.
Couple of comments. We do have two separate things in the packet, but we've been talking about the water curtailment regulations, and it looks like it's Exhibit A, 1322-020, Water Curtailment Authority. It just calls out the administrator. I think that probably should be changed to city administrator, just I had a conversation with Ross, and that is what it means. Every place else in all of our code language, we specify city administrator, so I think that should be done. The other question I had on this was this, yeah, it's an ordinance. This ordinance is called out as an emergency. I think based on what I was just told, it's really not an emergency right now. It may be a problem next year, so I don't see any reason to, when this does come before us, if it's within the next month or two, that I think the emergency language should be removed. Do you want to stay on this topic, or should I go to the other one?
Let's
Stay, okay.
wrestle this one
Okay.
out and then go to the... Anybody else on this one? No? All right. Jump ahead.
Okay. On the other one, which is the first page behind number 11, behind the purple sheet, I guess that's purple, I believe part of this was looked at by City Council within the last year, having to do with renters, who's on the water accounts. And a portion of this, I believe Ms. Taylor from the Water Department came and spoke and gave a presentation, and I believe Council at that time directed them to move forward with that. So I'd just like to make sure that that's, if we all still feel that way, I think that's the direction the Water Department felt it should go. I believe that the Assistant City Administrator is behind this, and they should continue moving on with it. But there are some other questions in here that they would like to know about. So I just want to kind of separate, do we want them to continue with what they've been told? And secondly, talk about there's some low-income eligibility stuff here. Was that the main?
Low-income eligibility, and I would like to get clarification, because the last time we came before you regarding renters, the council at that time agreed that we could grandfather in the people that, renters that were not having any problems paying their bills. But once they became in shut-off, then we would switch them, and no longer would the account be in a renter's account. They would be in a property owner's account only from here on out. And any new people that attempted to sign up who were renters, they wouldn't be allowed to sign up. It would only be property owners. And just for absolute clarification, we have there's one apartment complex that is, we're billing the renters. The rest of the apartment complexes, we bill the property manager owner. And then this would also include businesses as well. So if you own commercial business property, the way that when the council we spoke to the council about this last time, commercial property, people that rent out, it would mean that they would have to pay the bill for the renters, and the renters would pay the property owners. I just want to make sure we're all clear. And of course, because of what's happened in the past, we would want to give ample notification and lots of notice of everything that we're going to do ahead of time. But because you guys are going to be fielding probably some of the concerns, I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Well, I'm gathering just from past experience that this is just a big cluster, and we're trying to uncluster it.
Well, we're trying to make it so that the predominance of our problem accounts, which are renters, not all,
right,
but would be eliminated with this proposed change. So we would uncluster it?
Right, to an extent, but I guess the problems we have, the big problems have been renter leaves, doesn't pay for 6 months, and then the owner sells the property shortly thereafter, and the new owner's like, what's this all about? And then we get this wrestling match, who's going to pay? So this just basically puts it on the owner of the property. And do we have the ability, I just have a question, they don't pay, do you put a lien on, can you put a lien on the house?
So you cannot put a lien on the property because what the city has done in past years was incorrect. We were advised by the attorney's office with the last issue that we had that you couldn't attach the amount due to the property. You could attach it to a person. So if somebody moves out, you could attach it to that individual. What?
Well, I mean, I've seen lien in being in construction. I mean, how long you could put a lien on your house? I mean, everybody that you owe money to.
That's statutory. That's by statute.
So that doesn't.
Well, it's not quite. It's very likely that that's what our office said.
Mm-hmm.
There's but my approach in other jurisdictions, I mean, since I haven't done a lot of work in Gladstone, is if you do enter into an agreement with the property owner to pay the bill, that as part of that contract, you could then authorize the city to create an assessment lien. So you can do it by contract as opposed to otherwise. You don't have, in other words, you don't have the freestanding authority to create a lien for water use. Okay? That's true. However, you could, if you entered into an agreement with someone, i.e. the property owner, not the tenant, because the tenant has no interest in the property, but with the owner, you could say a failure to pay would result in, and they would then agree on behalf of themselves, their successors and assigns, to, as a condition of receiving water, that you could put a lien on it. So that's what I would suggest that you do, as with what I would say recalcitrant water users, that you then say, well, we're pushing you over to an owner. The owner's going to have to sign an agreement. That you put that as a term in terms of the agreement itself. That's what I would suggest.
And that's what's missing in our ordinance right now. We deal with the renter, therefore we got nothing. If the renter moves out of town, see you later. We lose 2 to 4 months worth of water.
So every new renter, Jolene, every new renter, whether or not, okay, so I lived at 255 West Kenmore, I rented it, I moved on, he gets another renter. As soon as that new renter comes in, even though it's the same owner, then we're going to go to this new protocol where the property owner is going to be responsible for the water bill.
That's what we're proposing, yes, so the owner.
With, by the way, we won't do this overnight with no notice.
No.
We'll send out and, this will be over a period of months, but, yeah.
All right.
So what do other cities do?
They do similar. They make the owners responsible, not the renters.
Okay. And there's good reason for that. There's a case that came out of the city of Corvallis some years ago, probably 15 years ago, and the city turned off water to someone gave appropriate notice. They failed to give appropriate notice, and then basically they got sued for a large dollar sum because the person who was in there was diabetic and needed water, and they turned off the water without notice. There's a variety of different things, not just notice, but also who then is responsible for water. So you have to be, I think, the approach, basically giving a significant amount of advance notice that you're going to be changing a policy and then implementing a policy over a span of time, I think is probably the most appropriate way to go forward with this, and then include in any agreement, and we'll take a look at it, whatever Jolene sends over, we'll send up something and have in a provision that basically allows for the lien, a contractual lien.
Is there a way to build in some leniency on something like this? I mean, once it happens, it's fine. But the first time it happens, you're going to have a renter move out. The new renter's going to come in. He's going to go, I just moved in. Can you turn my water on? No, you're going to have the owner get a hold of us. Well, the owner's in Arizona. I mean, one thing, as we do this, and this will be very short term as they're getting rotated over, but I think we need to have some sort of leniency in there just internally that we turn their water on, but you got 30 days to take care of this.
No, not that long. Hardship clause, maybe a week.
Yeah, whatever.
In Portland, the landlord, the owner of the property, pays the water bill, whether it be through the property manager or whatever, and then negotiates with the tenant, however, whether they make it part of the rent or they don't, and they say they want this much money or whatever. Some jurisdictions go this other way, okay, and work with the tenant, but more and more utilities seem to be going over to making it the landlord's responsibility, period. It seems to make it easier for them and the landlord, quite frankly.
So that's what we were suggesting, to make sure that I'm clear. We're suggesting that the landlord is responsible, the landlord or the property owner is responsible for that bill, would get the bills, would have to make the payments, and they would be responsible for figuring out how much to increase their rent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jolene, can you just kind of run through this low-income thing? Apparently you guys have an issue with that. It's been cropped up, I'm assuming.
Well, we just want to make sure that we're doing what the council would like, because oftentimes, you know, it's been done 100 years this way, and you all may not even know how we're doing it. So since we're looking at the tenants and water and reduction, we do have low-income subsidy available for low-income individuals. Some jurisdictions have some sort of cap as to how long you can be on it. We don't do that. We have it so that you can be on it forever. And I just want to make certain that this is what your expectation is, as well as we only look at income. We don't look at assets.
So how do you gauge that? Do you have them bring you something, or is it just how much do you make and they say 10,000,
well,
20
right now
a year?
we require them to bring us a tax return, and if you're lower than a certain amount, you don't have to fill out a tax return, but we require them. I can't remember the number that the IRS is assigned. There's a number that you fill out when you're not. You don't have to fill out a tax return. You can fill one out, and then you can bring that into us. I mean, there's ways for people to get around the system, but we're just trying to make sure that what we do is what the council desire.
And what's the rate? I mean, how much is it drastic? Is it 10% off, or?
I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly how much
the bill.
it is. Yeah, I know,
rate.
but I can't remember exactly what the rate cut is for them. I don't remember. I could find out and I could email everyone, since this is just a discussion.
I mean, it's not like 50%. Anyway,
No.
okay, email us.
Okay.
There's one other thing that I think would be important to know, because I happened to ask the question here a few months ago when we was talking about water, is what it takes to qualify for the low income.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember the exact number, but it was poverty level for a family of this much is here. Well, in order to qualify for Gladstone's reduced water bill, your income level is well below. It was a percentage, if I remember right, and it was a sizable percentage below the poverty level. So it's not like, well, you don't make $100,000 a year, you only make 99, so you qualify. It was, if I remember right, it was fairly sizable. So that might be a good thing for us to know as well.
That too. Okay.
And as far as assets, I would put that in, I guess. I think that's important to know, but I don't think there's any way for you to really find out.
I was just going to say that. I mean,
Probably
really,
not an
where's
easy
the
way to do it.
enforcement arm of that? So you might as well just let it go.
Well, and the other thing is that they should requalify every year. You shouldn't just be on the dole forever.
No, they have to requalify every year, but
Okay.
they can be on the dole forever if they requalify every year. So there's no like, okay, you can be on it for a year and you have to not.
But if they're required to show a tax form, I think that might, if there are people that have a large amount of assets, that may show up on a tax form
As income or something.
as,
They're gonna be on a 1040 something and you see the INTs.
right, yeah. You know, so, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with putting it in there, just as a tool. When they bring in their qualifying paperwork, you go, sorry, this ain't gonna cut it. But I wouldn't wanna spend a lot of money trying to find out if they are or not either.
You probably won't get all of it because they would have to be income-producing assets or would have to be sold. I mean, if you own securities, you know, stocks or some such, if they didn't produce a dividend, you wouldn't show any earnings at all. And if they just held them, when there was no sale, you wouldn't know that they owned them. I mean, the ownership doesn't show up on the stock form or on the tax form, only if you do a sale and then you have proceeds and it's against your basis by what you bought those securities for.
But that's therefore the annual.
Right.
So you wouldn't just be able to.
I have a question. Is there any limit on the amount of water they can use? I mean, are these people that are watering, you know, a large acre of questionable vegetation? I mean, what's the limit? Where's the ceiling?
There is no limit for when you're on a subsidy
Okay.
at this point, unless you want to change it. It's strictly a rate. So you can get that rate no matter how much you use.
So we could do it on the base rate, not on the graduated rate.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a rental home and your landlord is okay with it, there have been some major changes to the law. So if your landlord says, you know, sure, go ahead and grow marijuana in the basement, that takes a lot of water. You know, no sense of beating around the bush. The law says so. You know, and if you've got somebody who we're subsidizing, and now they've got this major agricultural operation going on that we're subsidizing as well.
Can't have more than 3 plants.
Is that fair? Okay.
Right, so, I mean, it's not gonna be a major agricultural undertaking in the basement.
But I, to the point, I mean, you know, let's face it.
Let's look at that
The
rate.
possibility that they could hook their neighbor's hose up to their thing and pump water to everybody, they're paying a reduced rate.
Right.
So maybe
we'll look
we
at
ought
that
to...
basis
Yeah.
for that.
And you probably have a typical amount of water that everybody uses.
Right, this is
You start
standard.
to see what that is if someone's wildly outside that, what you would say is that bell curve, then you're going to say, well, there's either a leak or there's something going amiss.
Wasn't there, I'm going to get off in the weeds here just a little bit, but wasn't there something about
Unintended.
medical marijuana where people could grow plants for other people? I mean, that was at one time part of the law. Maybe it's changed, maybe it's gone away.
Yes, you're
So-
right, but I'm assuming for the types of users you're talking about, those would have to be commercial operations, so they would not be able to be in a residential area, is what I'm suggesting. I mean, that would be then a commercial operation. So, I mean, and then you might have a home occupation permit, and I don't think you would allow for that in any event. But yes, that would be.
Okay.
Tomatoes, Chinese tomatoes.
Can we cover everything, Jolene?
Well, I just have one other thing for complete disclosure, that if we go to a purely, we're going to bill the owners, that's going to mean that some people who are renters are not going to be able to qualify for a subsidy because they're not the ones that are on the account.
What a conundrum.
So, I just want to make sure that you have the full picture.
Let us contemplate that and
Yeah.
come to you with a solution.
I'd like...
Okay,
Sure.
And I would remind the audience this is discussion. Don't worry, Todd. We'll have time to discuss it. So I can see. So yeah, This is
Okay.
just discussion. I'm making a decision tonight.
So we are now moving down to the Charter Review Committee formation. No attachments.
Yep. No attachments. I guess I'm looking for what you guys want out of a charter review committee in terms of how many people, how those people get appointed, when you want this committee to kick off, when you want it to end up. So I'm open to your suggestions at this point.
We did 9 people for the Police Department City Hall Committee. That seemed to work out well. The reasons that we picked 9 were to cover absentees and attrition. I originally thought 7 was a good number, but 9 seemed to work out fairly well. And when we did that, there was discussion, as I recall, about making sure that the people who were on the committee were residents of Gladstone. And while we could have people who are employees and who are residents of Gladstone, we were not going to be bringing people in from outside unless they were residents. Okay. My opinion on this committee, I think it's extremely important, and I would like to see up to 3 council members on it if possible. And I don't know about planning commission members. That might be a good idea as well. But we went through some of this with that committee, and those guidelines seem to work well, and so I'd like to see us continue in that vein.
My thought in regards to what you were talking about, the planning commission, if we set aside any slots for a particular citizen committee, standing one, I think we've got members of others like the Parks Board, Traffic Safety, that would library probably, that would also like to participate also. So I think just leaving it open to at large. Sure. From past experience, last couple of years, we haven't gone wrong.
It's true.
I think that at large is probably the best.
So that would bring to point who appoints this. I assume you'd just like to receive applications. The mayor, we had a little trouble with this appointing the last council person, so I assume the mayor would appoint and council would approve.
Well,
that's what the charter says.
What the charter says, but that's not what we've done historically.
Yep, I kind of am sensitive to that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would prefer continuing the way we're doing it. I mean, if we're going to review the charter and the people vote on the charter and the changes, then we might change that. I know that in reading charters, other cities have the same language, and I think they do very similar to what we do. They send out notice and get applications, and then the council as a whole votes on them. But
I think our charter is very specific, and I mean, I like the way it has been done in the past, but being it has been brought to our attention that this is what the charter says, and this is the way you should do it, past practice should stop until the charter is changed, if it does get changed. And I think if it specifies the mayor should appoint and be approved by council, I believe that's the way we need to go, because that's basically the rules we're working under, and we know that now.
Well, I'm only going to add that basically we should, I've said this before, we should wait till after the town hall. We should make this a deal at town hall. And besides the newsletter and besides the website, and, we just bring it up at town hall, say, here's your chance, here's your first chance to help shape where we're going and what's going on.
Having been through this a couple of times, this is usually a fairly lengthy process because everybody wants to get a word in. It needs to be at a general election in 2016 because then it's free if you get this charter amendment on the ballot. So that leaves you, I think, with May and November as your due dates. So pretty close. So probably the sooner the better, but certainly after the town hall would be okay. That's another 30 days off. If you hit you probably won't hit the May election. It's probably for the November election at that point. So that's just input into your conversation, not direction.
And just so that you know, there is a model charter that the league has developed that you can use as essentially a template, and you can include other topics there. And our office has helped any number of jurisdictions. In fact, our office wrote the model charter based on prior model charters that the league had. And so, but I think that you're not going into completely unknown territory. Lots of jurisdictions have done this. You may, and you can, and remember, it is about the form of the government. Okay, that's what it is. It's the allocation of authority, of municipal authority to the government. So that's how you should think about it. And that's what when you have your town hall, you should say that's what this is. That's what this is about.
So if we waited to town hall, you confident we could get it done because of the template? This could be achievable by November?
I think
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that?
By November of 2016.
Right.
Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
That would be a good goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we good then?
Okay,
We all agree.
got the direction I need.
All right. Down to town hall for October 14th or 21st. No attachments.
And by the way, those now have to be this is up to you guys. Once again, I'm looking for direction here. One, where do you want to hold a town hall? That has something to do with it. Two, what topics do you want to cover at the town hall? Three, how do you want to present those topics, questions and answers? What's this thing going to look like? Comments, thoughts? I think you need it before the election.
Oh, yeah.
Last, 2 or 3 have been at the senior center.
Okay.
And I think the last one, and I think the one before, where it was kind of an open forum. There was one that was held like 3 years ago, where there was a lot of table discussion. Feedback that I heard that didn't go over as well as the open discussion. And I was reading through your email from a couple of weeks ago. So a thought I had was where let's say you open up at 6, have just kind of a meet and greet where different people can talk to us individually about different things. Maybe at 6:30 come together for an hour or so talking about the ballot measure and giving you information, answering questions, and then after that, having an official close, but us be available again for questions about any topic in discussion. We're not where we're all clumped together, but mingling in the
Are you paying?
amongst the crowd.
Is there money going to be expended if there's going to be discussion about the ballot measure?
Oh, good point.
What does the senior center cost the city to rent?
I don't think we have to pay for that, because that's our facility.
All I want to do is make sure that there's no municipal expenditures if you're talking about the ballot measure.
Okay.
Okay? You guys can, you as politicians can, but the city staff can't be involved in it, all of those sorts of things. That's why most ballot measures you see, PACs created, and do it that way. All I want to do is just caution you about that. In terms of those, you can't use city staff to promote or oppose any ballot measure. And you've got a ballot measure now, so you've got to be scrupulous. You guys can talk about it. You can all say, yes, we're all in favor of it. But if there's money, somebody can tie it to the expenditure of money for whatever you might see as ancillary. It could be an election law violation. And then...
So
we can't advertise it? We can't use the city
newsletter.
Nothing.
So we can't put it in the newsletter.
You have to be very careful in how you phrase it, and how you phrase whatever you send out. And you cannot use, that's all, but I can advise you that the Secretary of State's office is scrupulous about that stuff. And you have to be very careful. Ross is not, he knows about this issue, okay? Let's put it that way. As do I.
How do you know about this?
So I just want you just be aware. Do not, that's not territory that you enter into lightly.
So will any city staff be at this town hall
They
at
can
all?
be at the town hall as long as you're not asking them to. They can do what I'll say are ministerial tasks. In other words, city recorder, if you pay, in other words, if the council, for example, wanted to adopt a resolution supporting this ballot measure, you could do that. One of you would have to prepare it, okay? Not city staff. And then, but Jolene could take the minutes about your adopting it and approving it. That would not be improper, okay? But you couldn't use them and say, well, please send this out. I mean, if you want to use paper, you'd have to use paper that's essentially non-city paper. I mean, it is a very, I mean, the statute's pretty clear. Well, let's put it this way. The Secretary of State has made sure that everyone is scrupulous about the expenditure of public dollars for the support or opposition of ballot measures. So just watch where that discussion takes place.
Yeah, and that would be an important part of the city hall is to promote that ballot measure. But you're saying that the 7 of us have to be the promoters
Yes,
of it,
yeah,
not
not
city staff anywhere.
No, I mean, they can believe in it or say whatever they want privately, but they cannot be directed by any of you to say one thing or another, okay? It becomes, and I realize that may seem to be somewhat tortured, but frankly, that's the state of the law, and
So then we have to form a PAC to raise money to earn leaflets so that we could go door to door and hand out leaflets for the town hall meeting.
If you're going to talk about the ballot
measure, absolutely.
So, if you're going to talk about the charter, that's an entirely different thing. You can say, but I wouldn't use one as a subterfuge to get to the other one.
Right.
So, that's all I'm saying is you may want to just treat them separately. In other words, you can say, you can all get up on the dais at that town hall meeting and say, just so everybody knows, we're all in favor of this. And, that's it. And this is why, each of us is in favor of this particular ballot measure, and this is why, and you're going to hear from us as both as a group and individually. Now we're going to move to this other topic, and then staff can then get involved.
Well, and that's one of the things, and maybe you can give us a little direction on this. I see this town hall as many topics. The state of the city addressed by the mayor, the charter committee, water, sewer, all these where our city is, and you're talking about one entity, which is the library, is off in its own little world. Does that mean that the city can't advertise for the town hall because one entity of it?
No. I'm not.
It's going to be discussed.
That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm just saying is that when you talk about the ballot measure, okay, you can say there's going to be a town hall, and you can put on the town hall announcement, discussion by council of ballot measure, whatever the number is. I'm not suggesting that you can't do that. What I'm just saying is you can't basically spend you can't spend public dollars to promote or oppose ballot measures.
You can't fund a campaign.
Bingo.
Right.
And so you can hand out leaflets that are, as long as they're basically fact-based and are not advocacy, which is they're easy to, they're not.
I'm not going there with you, Bob. That's all I'm going to say.
They aren't necessarily, but someone can always raise a complaint about whether or not it was advocacy or not. And so you have to, and there's guidelines that the Secretary of State sent out. And if you want to make sure that it's absolutely immune from attack, you send it down to the Secretary of State's office and have them review it for you. So,
the city did that, I think, with the library. I believe there was a fact sheet that was sent out by the library before the election.
Right.
Do you know? You might not know. Did that go to the Secretary of State or not?
I believe it was pre-approved.
And we've looked at that. We've drafted ones that are. I mean, obviously, your ballot measure had to be has to be that as well. It doesn't, so it has to meet that. Your explanatory statement you've got 500 words to explain it, so you've got a little bit more freedom there. But what I'm saying, all that I'm saying, as soon as I heard town hall, spending, where's this going to be held, I thought immediately of rental, and then you're talking about then the ballot measure. I just wanted to insert myself maybe in a long-winded fashion, which I apologize for, but I just wanted you to be aware.
Okay.
Does anybody know the capacity of the senior center room? And the reason I ask is my goal for this town hall would be a lot of people. You don't usually see participation in Gladstone at a city meeting type thing. I think the election this last year has created a buzz. I think the new people on the council has created a buzz, and I question if we go out and really try to reach out to people if the senior center is large enough. I was thinking more like the cafeteria where you and I were for that teachers.
Yeah, off the cafeteria thing, or even they've got a auditorium or something.
Yeah, I don't.
High school auditorium.
Well, but that's going to be hard for one-on-one stuff.
Oh, okay.
For a presentation, it would be great, but I don't know that.
I'm with you.
I would
make it bigger. I'm okay with moving it to somewhere else.
My recollections of past town halls are that while they were well attended, the meeting room at the senior center was not filled to capacity.
Okay.
I mean, we could ask Mike Funk and find out if we were close or not, but it seems to me that there was another half of that room at least that was still available.
For lunches at senior center, they generally have 100 to 110 people. Okay? So you got a few tables, whatever, in there, but you're relatively limited. And that is my question, is what do you really want to accomplish at the town hall, okay? I'm assuming it's to communicate, okay? And do you want to do it with 100 or 200? Or are you looking for 1,000, 2,000, okay? And if you're looking for those kind of numbers, the senior center's not going to cut it. I think it needs to be someplace relatively large and well advertised. That way we can get people there, and we can set it up, however, to get group conversations or whatever. But in the past 2 or 3 town halls I've been at for Gladstone, it's been relatively, from 50 to 75 people, someplace in that range. And I don't think that's enough.
No, I
There's
agree.
12,000 people in this town.
One thing we should probably think about is having access to something like this, which puts us back into the high school properties.
Yeah, that's...
Because then, you could just be really professional and zap it on the screen while you're talking.
There's a risk of having a small meeting in a large room.
No.
I mean, if you don't fill the room...
we just got to step up to the plate and get it done.
Make it happen.
We just got to do it.
Get people there.
The capacity is 112 for the senior center.
Well, I said 110, so...
You were right
There
on
you
the
go.
ball.
Can't you get any closer than that? I thought
I'm
you was an
sorry.
engineer.
So
They're probably wrong.
have we decided what, you want more like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Are we
I
going to
know.
have booths set up in the foyer or whatever, that kind of thing?
I think we're pushing ourselves into the end of October right now. I still think before the November election's a good thing to do. So end of October puts us on the 23rd if you want to use the senior center. If you don't want to use the senior center, then I got to go out and make some reservations, and that may be problematic in itself. I don't know how far ahead the high school is, so you got to give me something there, and then I would like you guys to at least narrow the scope of the conversation, because staff will probably be putting together information for you and displays and whatever else. Hate to define the universe and give 3 examples. So topics and time, and then location. If you guys think you can get over 200 people, obviously the senior center is not your place. And by the way, we need to pick a date so we can get it in the next newsletter that goes out. I don't think we've missed that. Probably need to get my friend Raymond Rendelman lined up and in the paper a couple of times. And so, I mean, all those things are kind of going around. I need to get moving on this if we're going to get one of these done and done right.
So as for format, I would think we should have obviously a fixed starting time, and
Yep.
somewhere in there a fixed time for a more formal presentation.
Okay.
But outside of that, I think there should be plenty of time for meet and greet, question and answer, small group, without getting too rigid. Probably prior to the formal presentation, whatever that is, and then for as long as people want to keep having conversations afterwards. And there would only be, I think there's only be those two times, start time and presentation time. I guess you could have a end time of 10, 11 o'clock because people want to get out of there, but
6 to 9's 3 hours.
Yeah, but if somebody would still have some concerns at 9:05, it's, hey, we're done, see you later.
Well, if you're in the senior center, you can leave it there as long as you want. If you're in the high school, you may have to...
Finish the conversation in the parking lot.
Yeah.
We've never done that before.
So the 1, 2, or 3 topics that we will formally be talking about, I mean, that,
Charter.
obviously the charter,
Ballot measure.
the ballot measure, and,
The library?
well, isn't that tied in with the
Well,
ballot
Nope,
measure?
it's
If
two
you talk
separate
about
items.
the library construction and where it's at and IGA and, how much the dollar value is and all of that stuff, that's certainly a good topic and would certainly show you're moving it along.
Mm-hmm. So those 3?
If you wanted to get scary, you could add Tri-City in there, but that might be a snoozer of a topic, even though it's important.
Could I ask our attorney a question? So if somebody's sitting in the audience and you give question and answer time and they say, hey, what are you going to do about the new city hall? Is that talking about the ballot? Or, can you respond to a question from the audience on this?
Sure.
Okay.
The council can.
Council can.
The council can. Yeah.
Council can.
You're out of town that week, right?
Okay, so repeat after me. Hey, what do you guys think about the news? Who's gonna...
You guys should also have a meeting before everybody gets their ballot on.
That's the goal.
Whatever day that is, try to have it.
Yeah. When do the ballots come out?
It's going to be coming out, I think, sooner than
Sooner than
October
that.
20-something. It's going to probably be mid-month.
Oh, my.
I'm thinking the week of the October 20th, everyone should have them.
Right, that's what I was thinking also. It's usually, I think, isn't it 21 days, 18 days, or something like that before the...
18 days.
Yeah, it'd be desirable to get ahead of that.
And you should probably, I've attended a couple of these, more than a couple. You really do want to have just at maximum of 3 topics that you want to talk about. You'll probably get the most energized folks who are energized about any of those 3 topics there. You're going to get probably, I won't tell you, you'll get a flavor of what the conversation is going to be on each of those. I wouldn't go over more than that. You can also, if you don't think that you can do it, you may also then want to just hire somebody who can help guide the conversation. Have a moderator. That's just something else that you may want to think about.
Yeah.
But that I leave. I will tell you that the best ones that I've seen, Forest Grove did that. They in fact had somebody who did that, and they did a pretty nice job. And they did it on a Saturday. They did it from a Saturday morning, like 8 until noon, and then it was over.
So, Jolene, what is the cutoff date for the newsletter?
I can't remember what it is this month. I'll check and I'll email it out to everybody. How about it?
Is there a possibility of delaying that? Is there any ordinance that would prevent us from delaying the sending of that?
There's no ordinance that prevents it. It would just come out late.
Yeah.
So
like after our next meeting on the 22nd of September?
I don't think it comes out till that last week anyway, on a regular basis.
Training has to be in by the, 15th, 16th.
Can we delay that?
Don't you need a public notice for the wireless being postponed?
You can delay it if you want to. You're the council.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
All right, so may I suggest three topics: state of the city, charter committee, and library. You don't notice ballot measure in there anywhere, but you know that topic's going to come up, and if it doesn't, you guys could close by saying, just to make it clear.
What about, we just got, it sounds like we're approved for a couple grants, or grants that may be approved, and I think some of them have to do with downtown, transportation.
State of the city.
That's what I was thinking. That would fall right into...
State of the city would be fairly general, but that would be a good call to get people out.
Well, and that's, in advertising, the topics could be what gets them, and so if you limit it too much, we may want to concentrate on 3 topics.
Okay.
But the more topics that
get covered under state of the city, those ones that we're trying to spark, the rebuilding, the vision, all of those things, the grants we're going to be going after, all those stuff that, and maybe you'll go, wow, I might want to go listen to that.
And those could maybe in advertising form be listed under state of the city.
And there could be more than 3 there, because that's the state of the city. Well, it is one of the things that's going on, but you don't have to go pro or con on it.
Right. Yeah. So.
You could give facts.
All right. So there you have it. Grants we're going after, ballot measure, upcoming grants that we got.
Steve Mays was working very hard to come up with conspiracy theory on council. It might be nice to talk about what's gone on since council formed up as well. I'll pull together an outline and start working it through the process.
And looking at days, I don't know if we would be opposed to a Saturday event if that fit the schedule better.
I think, wouldn't you think of like I don't know, an evening would be better? The Saturdays, dude, they're tough.
Yeah.
They are tough.
Yeah.
We've always done
Duck
evenings in the
football,
past.
Beaver football. You're competing with the big heavyweights. We want, Little House on the Prairie at 6 o'clock.
Do they not know who our mayor is?
Yeah. Don't forget Vikings.
Okay, I'll come up with some dates. I'll come up with kind of an outline of things to cover in the state of the city. So I'll do those 2 things, and then the agenda, I've heard you guys talk it up here a little bit. I'll put together an agenda for you guys to tear apart, and then we'll go from there.
You got enough?
Yeah, I do.
Moving?
Absolutely.
We feel comfortable?
We've been really quiet. For the newsletter? We have enough for the newsletter at that point?
I can hold the newsletter until we have enough.
Okay, so are we going to discuss it again next meeting, or?
I don't care if you think you need to.
I don't know that we need to. It's just I'd hate to miss that publication date for the newsletter.
Okay,
I guess
we won't.
What worries me.
I suggest that we do it the right way. We don't try to squeeze something in just to get it in. If we're going to have a town hall, let's have a good town hall and figure out how we're going to do it. And if we have to get together more times or whatever, then let's do it.
Well, I agree.
Could have a special
but
meeting.
just announcing it in a newsletter, we don't have to spell it out in there what we're going to be, every little topic, just the big parameters, kind of like an essay. You kind of hit in your opening what you're going to be talking about, and then get into the meat and potatoes later.
But I do think, I don't know if you were looking along these lines, but I think we should have like a special session or a work session, whatever you want to say, so that the state of the cities is kind of we draft, okay, does this, what do you think? Does this make sense? Can this paragraph
To
fit?
me, this town hall can be an important event, and we can communicate a lot and get a lot of input.
Right.
So let's do it right, and if we have to work together and do it, well, we may get in a few fisticuffs, but...
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
All right.
Touch your right hook, Tom.
So we're good, you got enough to move forward? No?
Yes, Your Honor.
Tell me what you want.
No, I'm thinking of the technical stuff. If I put together a bunch of stuff, I gotta have somebody review it. I would love to have maybe 3 of you that would review and give me your input so I don't risk any email meeting laws. Could you give me 3 people that I could work with to develop this?
Newbie?
Sounds like
And a realtor.
Like
Tom
wants to be on it.
Tom?
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
I would.
And Mr., well, you know what? I'm gonna take the 3rd spot. All right?
Okay, there you
Okay, perfect. I'll put stuff together and we can start getting that lined up.
All right. Moving forward, business carried forward update. Update on council goals.
I got no update for you at this time.
Very good. Second reading, business from the audience. 3x5 cards, if you haven't turned them in, wave them in the air. Jolene, you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, no business from the audience. Last but not least, business from the council. Starting with you.
Inside corner. I have nothing this month.
Mr. Tom.
I've talked too much already.
Can we get anything?
I got 2 things. One, you thought you was getting out of here.
I'm working on it.
As we're moving forward with the Sissel engineering proposal on the property, and I've mentioned this before, we don't know whether we're going to sell the property, whether we're not. We're just working that way. We need to take and get some movement on what went wrong the last time that property was sold. I don't know what that looks like. I know that that's not something that Sissel Engineering should be doing for us. I think probably city administration has quite a bit on their plate already. But if that's a direction that we're headed, that's very important information that we should have. If somebody wanted to take that on, how would they go about doing that, and is that a direction the council would like to go?
I don't have any burning desire to dig it up. I mean, I understand there's some value, but, you know, we've talked about this before. What it's going to take is someone to go through the old minutes and flush them through, and every minute you can find, and if somebody's willing to do that, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to do it.
I nominate Kim.
Well, I would be willing to take that on, you know, to at least get some preliminary information back to us.
All right.
But I think it's going to be a very important part if we do move forward. The second thing is employee reviews. I bring that up because one of the things I would really like to see Mr. Schultz do before he leaves us, and we know it's going to be short term, I look at him that he actually comes in here, he is our city manager, but he could work as a consultant, how do I say this? I look at him as being he's a short-term employee here. It would be like hiring a consultant to come through and do our department head reviews that are done annually. And I think it would be a very beneficial from his experience, his insight, to do that.
Before he leaves?
Or we get him to work in the...
Well, I don't know when he's leaving yet. He hasn't told us the hire date for the new guy. But it just... And I don't know where that would fit in the priorities list, but I think it would be very valuable information for the new city administrator coming in.
I agree.
Does he have time?
Yeah.
If I may, yeah, I see this as a low priority for me, unless you guys make it a high priority, but I'm hiring 4 new people right now, and Jolene and I have talked. This may or may not be the appropriate time, but she will be resigning her current position effective October 31st, but will stay on until June 30th next year. So there's transition to be thought of. We have a lot of things going on, not to mention a ballot measure,
Or two.
Property locations.
Just say no.
Yeah.
Say,
So
I don't
anyway,
wanna
it's
do
a
it.
low priority. I don't mind working on it maybe as I leave, but it's not going to be done in the next month or two.
All right.
That's all.
So, something we brought up a couple of months ago when we were talking about the different master plans, in that Sissel has been involved in a lot of these different things, and we talked about them tonight, that we need, they seem to be a fallback for when we need engineering done, and we need to decide, are they going to be our city engineer, or do we need to officially put out, a process? I was talking about that earlier. That's one of the reasons why I brought that up earlier, in regards to, are we doing this right? And I don't know.
I think your new city administrator will be able to give you very good insight on that.
Okay, so we'll put. Okay, sounds good to me. That's all I have.
Nothing.
I'd just like to thank the city administrator and the city administrator's assistant, the city administrator, for all their help getting me organized and all the information you've passed to me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. You do a
Thank
great
you.
job.
I don't have anything. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
For sure.
Keep them cards and letters coming in. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down.